Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try to speak up so you can hear me. It is 6 o'clock. It is the May 25th called meeting of the Social Circle Planning Commission from the shifted date of May 23rd for lack of a quorum on Tuesday. We do have a quorum present tonight with one member missing, Mr. Jay Paul. All other members are present. For those of us here on the Planning Commission, you've had a copy of the minutes from April 25th meeting. Seeing or hearing any corrections that need to be made, the chair will entertain a motion to approve those minutes as published. We have a motion by Signora Jackson, seconded by Adolphus Gaither, to approve the minutes as posted. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Minutes published, passed unanimously. Next, we do have several public hearing items. Before we begin on public hearing, just hit some highlights of the rules of public hearing. The chair will call the item to the floor. City staff will present the item, give a staff report and staff recommendation. After the staff recommendation, we'll open up the public hearing by introducing the applicant to speak. The applicant has a total of 10 minutes to speak their case. They may reserve time for rebuttal. After the 10 minutes or the presentation by the applicant's ended, chair will entertain or open up the public hearing for those who would like to speak in favor of the request. Likewise, the members who would like to speak in favor will receive a total of 10 minutes, not 10 minutes each. Upon conclusion of those speaking in favor, we'll hear from the members who would like to speak in opposition. Again, a total of 10 minutes each. Upon closing the public hearing, the Planning Commission members will go into deliberation and make a recommendation. We are not a decision-making body. We only make recommendations to the mayor and council. So for the first item, we have a variance request. The applicant is Jessica Elder on behalf of Byside Capital. It's a variance request from section 905, subsection C2A, to reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 14.5 feet at 1020 Town Circle. Just, Ms. Ashley, if you'll open up and introduce this item for us, we'd appreciate it.
As the chairman said, this is a variance request for Jessica Elder on behalf of Byside Capital. And they've requested a variance from section 905C2A to reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 14.5 feet at 1020 Town Circle, also known as tax parcel NS13A144. And this property is located within the Town Park subdivision. The required setbacks are 10 feet at the front, 15 feet at the sides, and 20 feet in the rear. The development is actually a planned unit development that was approved in October of 2002, and the preliminary plat was approved within the same month. Because this development is a PUD, the developer must enter into a development agreement with the city. Part of Town Park's development agreement limits the house plans. They have 5 house plans that they can use that are included within the development agreement, if you guys remember. Another stipulation of this agreement is that all homes must be built with a sunroom. The developer would like to use the smallest plan available to them, which is the Scottsdale plan on this property. However, the required sunroom would encroach into the rear setback by 5.5 feet. According to the site plan shown, the house would be placed on the deepest part of the lot. If you can see here, that part of the lot is as far back as that lot goes. And no other setbacks would be encroached upon. So it's just that rear setback that would be over by 5.5 feet. Staff recommends approval of the request for a reduction of the rear setback from 20 feet to 14.5 feet in accordance with Exhibit A shown below, which is this site plan on the PowerPoint. The reason being it holds the integrity of the development agreement if we approve this variance.
Thank you, thank you, Ashley. Quick question for you. Do you foresee future variances, applications, or requests like this for any additional lots in Town Park?
I did advise my contact with Byside to apply for them if there were any other ones that they foresee they needed to apply for all of them in one fell swoop. But being that this developer also was not the developer that platted the lots, you know, they're kind of working with what's platted at the same time. I don't think there's any more that would require variance. I think this is the only lot that would require that rear setback variance. Now, if you do remember, there is a blanket variance for the side setbacks on one of the plans. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which plan that was, but there is a blanket variance for that.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff?
So on the other side of that is obviously another lot,
Correct.
right? And its plan is not going to encroach?
It should not.
We would already know that, correct?
Yes. I'm not sure if that lot has already been issued a building permit off the top of my head. But that lot looks deeper than this lot is anyways, so I think that lot would be fine. I know it's kind of hard to see the tax parcel lines on.
So I guess my next question is a little more of a general question. How many of if there are more of these, how many is there before we should consider a blanket variance for that plan?
I don't foresee any more coming before, but I mean, if you guys want to go ahead and give a blanket variance or...
I don't, but I don't
Yeah.
do one of these every month.
Right, there shouldn't be more, because I'm sure the contact that I have, Jessica, I'm sure she looked through and she wanted to get them all done so they can keep rolling with getting permits.
So this should be the only one.
This should be the only one.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other, I can't speak. You can't hear me, I can't talk. Are there any other questions for Ashley? If not, we'll open up the public hearing. Is Ms. Elder or anyone represented by side? Yes. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Eric Knott, and I am here in lieu of Jessica. She had a graduation to attend. You've laid out everything pretty clear. We would like for you to honor the variance just simply so all the house plans match. That would be the only house in the community without a sunroom that we're aware of at this point. So I believe Jessica has gone and had our surveyor double check the remaining lots to see if there were any other issues with encroachment, and I don't believe there is.
How many house plans do you guys propose?
Five were approved by the city. Yeah.
Perfect, okay. And which one is this, Scottdale? Did I just make that up?
I believe it is.
There is one called that.
Yeah, it says right here in front of me, thanks. Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Knott, you have a lot of time remaining. You don't have to use it.
Okay.
So, if there's no other questions, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We did not have anyone signed up to speak for or against this variance request. Therefore, we will close the public hearing. Thoughts, current concerns, discussion? To me, it seems pretty benign. You have 14 and a half feet remaining between the back of the house and the lot line. If the lot behind it were to build, they have that setback as well, so you've got your more than 20 feet distance between buildings and structures. So as far as the building code, that distance requirement is met. Even if that other lot had to get a variance as well due to the depth, if it was fit 5.5 foot like this one, you still have almost 30 feet of separation between structures.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Okay, go ahead. So we have go
Okay.
ahead.
I just motion that we approve the variance for this lot.
We have a motion. We have a unanimous second. All those in favor, please raise your hands to approve. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening. So the next item is a rezoning request at 1515 North Cherokee. It is from R15 zoning classification district to general commercial. Ms. Ashley, would you introduce this for us, please?
Sure thing. Jerry Bales has requested a rezone from medium density residential R15 to general commercial, which is GC, to market the property for sale at 1515 North Cherokee Road, also known as tax parcel SC120028. This property is located on North Cherokee Road, and it's located on the north side of the city. This particular property has historically been the residence that house the owners of the business on the tax parcel SC120034, which is our next public hearing. The owner of this property would like to rezone to market it to interested commercial buyers. It is the intent of the owner to sell this property with tax parcel SC120034, since the property provides access to tax parcel SC120034. So that back portion is provided access through the front portion, since it backs up to the railroad. And the currently adopted future land use map character area for this property is commercial. The commercial character area is planned to provide for larger scale businesses which cannot be accommodated downtown. The mix of uses should be such that they do not duplicate or draw from the downtown, but provide additional larger scale stores or entertainment venues. This character area provides for larger scale commercial uses clustered together with consolidated or shared parking. Large expanses of parking are discouraged. Buildings and parking should be arranged to create an integrated village type layout reminiscent of a downtown, with linear street parking on local roads and some off-street parking where necessary. Landscaping is provided along the road frontage and within parking areas to provide shade, aesthetic appeal, and stormwater runoff mitigation. Signage identifying the center and the businesses within the center is encouraged at entries to internal roads. Architecture that is conducive to the business yet also reflects and enhances the small town feel of the area is encouraged. The commercial character area is grouped in a single node at the north end of the city at the intersection of North Cherokee Road and Social Circle Parkway, or Highway 11. This area provides the opportunity for a strong sense of entry into the city. This intersection of the Parkway and North Cherokee Road provides the setting for highly landscaped and attractive gateway signage, welcoming visitors and reinforcing the sense of place. In addition, this gateway signage is intended to route industrial traffic to the Parkway. This area is intended to support medical offices and facilities, grocery stores, and similar retail. The goal is to have attractive signage, street trees, and landscaping are encouraged. Trails that are safe and inviting for pedestrian and bicycle use should be provided adjacent to the Parkway and along North Cherokee Road. Within this area, sidewalks provide connections from parking to buildings and between buildings such that it is safe and inviting for shoppers to walk from store to store within the center. Compatible zoning districts are GC, mixed-use business park, I'm so sorry, MUBP or AG. I can go, I don't know how in-depth you guys want me to keep going into the staff report. If you want me to go into the staff analysis on these questions, I can.
Just give the staff recommendation.
Okay, so you guys might have an older copy of the staff report, but staff recommends approval of the applicant's request to rezone plus or minus 0.31 acres at 1515 North Cherokee Road, also known as tax parcel SC120028, from medium density residential to general commercial with the following condition. If the properties are not to be combined, a new plat including an easement granting access to tax parcel SC120034 must be recorded before any permits for the property are issued, just so we ensure that we keep access to that back portion.
Do you have that condition written so that it's on the screen?
I don't have it written on the screen, but I have it on.
That's okay.
Here, Ms. Glenda.
Okay. Are there any questions? Are there any questions of Ashley?
That has the motion on there, or staff recommendation. Yeah.
That has, ours didn't have the,
Yeah, we updated it based on some information that came from some citizens I believe have signed up to speak. And there was some switching of land at some point that has there's kind of driveways, old driveways that are all kind of in there.
Yes.
So that was part of the reason why I added that recommendation. Yes, this is the old, the back portion is the old O'Kelly's barbecue. Yeah. The front portion is the house that the people lived in below. Yeah.
are there any other questions for Ashley?
Everything to the left and the right of it's already zoned general commercial, right?
So the surrounding properties, if you look under the exhibits, I think the one that I gave you has it. There are some properties that are zoned general commercial. Nearby zonings are AG, OI, and GC. So the property to the south, I believe, is zoned AG still, but there's across the way, there's property that's zoned GC and OI. The property to the north is zoned OI, and this is our commercial area of our future land use map.
And Ashley, thank you. I sent you an email a week or so ago when I was looking at the agenda online, or 2 weeks ago. And I thought we had a zoning map from 2017 that showed this as being general commercial already. Did I just dream that?
No, you did not. So we did have, it was from prior to 2017, but I think the 2017 map changed it to residential 15 for some reason. Before my time, I'm not sure why that changed. Barbara and I did look extensively through the minutes, and we tried to find, record of why it changed. And that's why, if you see within their application packet, there's an email from me saying, we're not going to require you to have a site plan or pay the fees, because at one point in time, the back piece of the property was also zoned GC on all the old zoning maps that we can find, but in the most recently adopted zoning map, it was switched some kind of way to AG. So we just wanted to take it through the process to make sure that we have something in the minutes somewhere saying these properties should be GC.
Okay, thank you for that. One more question. Is public water and sewer available on the site, to the site?
Public water is, I would think that sewer would be available, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Is that property in the city of Circus Lake?
No, it's in the city. Yes, ma'am. The city-county boundary looks like it.
It's just
above
north.
that.
I can tell you exactly where to sign
Very close. Okay. No other questions. We'll call forward the applicant. Yes, sir. Mr. Bales, if you want to come up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Ashley explained that quite well. We definitely want to go ahead and get the back piece of property. It was a restaurant for years. And the little property in the front, we purchased that because that is the road frontage. So now we want to go ahead and get those put to GC and get them marketed.
Okay. You had the opportunity to hear Ms. Davis's staff recommendation to include that condition.
Yes,
Is that condition something that you're comfortable with?
yes,
Okay. Next question. If this body were to recommend approval with a condition, not necessarily what you heard from Ms. Davis, but a recommendation to combine both pieces, if the body recommends approval and if city council follows suit at a later date and approves the rezoning, would you have a problem being held to a condition that both properties are combined to be one?
That would not be a problem, right?
Right,
Gotta
yeah.
ask the other owner.
Okay. And I imagine because of the driveways and accessibility of other properties, cross-access easements would be worked out.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Bales, you've got 8.5 minutes left for rebuttal, should you need it.
I'll say.
Okay, thank you, sir. At this time, I don't have anyone here to speak in favor for the rezoning request for 1515 North Cherokee. I do have one individual that would like to speak against. So, Ms. Regina Davison?
Give you I wrote my notes because I thought maybe I just had 1 minute and I had to talk really fast.
You've got 10 minutes.
I won't take that long.
Okay.
We've already heard a little bit about what I'll have written here, so just bear with me.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
My name again is Regina Davidson. With my daughter Andrea Reeves, I'm co-owner of 1501 North Cherokee, which is a residence. We purchased this property in May 2021 and also had the property surveyed in 2021. I have a condition and I get a little short of breath, excuse me.
Join the crowd.
Andrea resides in the house at 1501 with her husband. I want to address two zoning requests on your agenda for 1511 and 1515 North Cherokee Road, which both join our property. Although we're not opposed to the rezoning request for these parcels, we do have concerns about the potential ultimate outcome of rezoning of 1511 and 1515 to general commercial status. Firstly, our concerns are what might happen after the properties are rezoned. With the vast list of businesses that could build there, many would have negative impacts on our residents. With these three small parcels, 1501, 1511, and 1515, so close together, bounded by railroad tracks and North Cherokee Road, we respectfully request that particular consideration be given to what types of businesses would be suitable for a location so adjacent to a residence. As examples, businesses with 24/7 operation or high traffic flows with multi-story buildings, continuous loud noises, extensive high-intensity outdoor lighting, emission of noxious fumes or odors, or alcohol sales are undesirable and we believe should be excluded so close to a family residence. In contrast to these or other undesirable traits, rezoning followed by establishment of any of a number of low-impact businesses at this location would be an improvement over the current declining state of these two parcels. Secondly, there's an issue regarding the driveway that provides the only access to parcel 1511, which is the lower one, not the street, and which also appears to have been used at times to access the backside of parcel 1515. Our plat, prepared and recorded in 2021, shows this driveway crosses one corner of our 1501 lot. Despite a thorough and diligent search, our surveyor did not locate any recorded right-of-way or easement provided for this driveway. We recently discussed this with the Community Development Department and provided them with a copy of our officially recorded plat. We strongly feel that the owners should address this situation before the properties are rezoned and before any sale of these properties. And then this next point that I want to make here is, you've already touched on it, that perhaps a potential way to resolve the second issue is the owners could combine the two parcels, 1511, 1515. Combination of parcels into a single property would provide frontage on Georgia 11 for access and thus resolve the issue of the driveway crossing our lot. We hope this body and the mayor and commissioners will be mindful of our concerns when finalizing the new zoning, rezoning regulations and any future development on parcels 1511 and 1515. Thank you for your time and attention.
Ms. Davidson, thank you. Can you point out on the screen there for all of us where your property is at 1501, please?
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Yep, perfect. Thank you. Okay, we do not have anyone else signed up to speak against. Mr. Bayless, you have at 8 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. If you have any rebuttal you'd like to provide.
I'm Vicki Bales. My parents, Jean and Sarah Lumens, have had this property. It's been in my family for about 75 years. And my parents ran O'Kelly's Barbecue, which was a business out of there. So how it got zoned agricultural, I'm not really sure. But we want it where we can move forward with the properties in Social Circle to improve how people see it when they come into that area. The properties across the street are bad. So we just want that whole area, which a couple of them have already been zoned general commercial, so we can just combine it to make that area look a lot better.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. This is our gateway into the city. And Ms. Davidson brought up some good points. Ashley, I'm going to put you on the spot. Hope you don't mind. That's probably why you get paid the big bucks, right? In the general commercial zoning district that they're requesting, I know you probably haven't had a chance to learn everything about the UDC that you guys are working on. I do imagine that that's going to get plowed forward. What are some of the uses that could establish in GC? And I ask this because I'm not typically a fan of speculative rezoning. I like to see a plan when a rezoning request.
Right.
And I understand that can't always be the case. But as Ms. Davidson pointed out, there probably are a number of uses that can go into GC that provide a lot of externalities that we might not think about when hearing a request without a plan.
Right.
Some of the things that I initially thought of as Ms. Davidson was speaking about is a gas station.
That would be allowed under GC. I will say though, under the new code, all of the commercial districts get consolidated into business. So I can speak to, I have that right in front of me.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I can speak to that. So let's see. So in business, you can also have, single family attached. You can also have hold on, let me make sure I'm reading this right. Yeah, you can have a single family attached, you can do a multi-unit building, you can do a live-work situation. A convent or a monastery is also allowed, a nursing home. You can do general retail sales, you can do fireworks sales, you can do an indoor sports and recreation use. You can also, as a special use, so it would have to come before this body, it would have a fuel station, vehicle sales, any remote vehicle sales, rentals, or maintenance and repair shop would be a special use under this zoning designation. So any sort of like auto service would be a special use. Personal service or studio or instructional service, that's all permitted. Maintenance or repair service, that's permitted. Restaurants are of course permitted.
Do we know how wide this parcel is?
If you want to, we can do a quick measurement.
Beyond Q Public, would you mind?
Yeah, no. No, this is not totally.
No, it's not survey, this is just a kind of
So we're running at like 90, so we've got about 142 feet-ish.
and I'm jumping ahead, and shame on me for doing so. I'm looking at 1511 along the back property line, looks like it's 215. Okay. And where I was going with that is, as potentially conditioned to mitigate any externalities on the property owner to the south, requiring a substantial vegetative buffer when the property is developed.
Right.
I believe the UDC establishes buffers between dissimilar zoning districts already, and it may be limited to 50 feet, but I don't recall. So I'm thinking ahead and getting ahead, and maybe wrongfully doing so.
Yeah, let me double check that really fast if you don't
Oh,
mind.
please.
Thank you.
Yep. That's correct. That's right, there's a little check. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So the proposed new code, would require that if the existing land use is single-family residential uses in other zoning districts, which this property would be since it's ag, all other uses would require 20 feet of a buffer.
Okay.
So 20 feet, and then if it was, so if they got rezoned to commercial, it'd be 20 feet of a buffer, and then also whatever setbacks too.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't think a 20-foot buffer is enough between an unknown commercial to protect the residents below it. That's just my thought. I mean, I would, one option is, if this body's so inclined to recommend approval of this request, is you place that condition that it's like a 75-foot buffer. Another idea is, if the body recommends approval on this request and approval on the next one, the condition of combining the two is required. That 75-foot buffer, or a buffer along that southern property line of these would be one property. This subject property at 1515, the reason I asked the width is it may not be conducive to a structure, but it may be conducive to a driveway and parking area, whereas it opens up to the larger piece behind that would be more conducive to a development. I do have concern that, without knowing a potential development, the externalities that may occur. Looking at 1501, just below there, the house, the structure is close. Now, that's not to say that 1501 can't come back at a later date and request a rezoning as well. This is the gateway. I believe our character area shows that this gateway would not remain residential. Is that correct?
Yes, so the gateway goes down into this intersection right down here.
Yes, ma'am.
We can also pull that up if you guys want.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
And nothing saying that the residents and owners of 1501 have to do anything with their property at this time. That may stay residential used far past our time here on Earth, but to protect their investment in quality of life, I definitely think, and this is my opinion, that some consideration be given to a buffer, more so than a 20-foot that's proposed by the UDC. which I think would, despite what may happen, will get adopted no matter what.
So this is the commercial node that was mentioned in the future, in the character area.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're right up here, and that property is here as well.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And ideally, you know, let's think about outside the vacuum here, but we've got, I still call it Fred's, sorry, 35 off, and then you have the gym, then you have the subject property, 1515 and 1511. So as that commercial creep gets on closer to residential, I put myself in that residential property owner's shoes. How close do I want to be next to any externalities? And I think that's what Ms. Davidson was so eloquently pointed out. That's my thoughts. I'll sit back and sit quiet now.
Can I ask exactly what the zoning is on the piece of property in between the gym and 1511 and 15?
Absolutely, we can look at
Joe and I.
It is?
Yeah, it is O&I, yeah. So if we zoom in here, so all this north of here is already zoned commercial, and then we got the O&I. This is the property we're talking about, and then on the south side of that property, it's actually light industrial there. And, I mean, as you can see, the light purple all around there is also light industrial.
So we have like the sample
And-
of zoning over.
Well,
It's, yeah.
that's a great example why you don't spot zone.
Yeah.
We've got spots all over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Commission members,
Okay. So, we have to make a motion in light of the fact that we have heard the
yes, that is correct. Now, I look at Ashley.
I see your wheels turning.
You know where I'm going.
Yes, I do. We can go ahead and have the other public hearing and then make a motion on both properties together if you'd like.
So, that's a very good suggestion, or we could,
That's gonna make it
Yep.
easier.
I think so.
being two separate parcels. One public hearing held on 1515. We don't make a decision,
We can table it for 30 minutes.
let's do that. Following Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Item is open, we need to
Yeah.
close it, so,
I'm gonna make a motion that we table the rezoning on this parcel until we have more information about the public hearing from the second parcel.
okay. So Valerie made a motion to table, have a second by Adolphus to be open back up after the next item. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you, that passes unanimous. Okay, Ashley, I think we all know that this staff report's gonna be very similar to the previous, but
I'll
just
skip
for
some.
dexterity's sake, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll skip the character area part. That part's always longest. Okay, so this one is our rezone 2023-002. Ms. Vicky Bales has requested a rezone from agricultural to general commercial to market the property for sale at 1511 North Cherokee Road, also known as tax parcel SC120034. As mentioned before, this property only has access through the previous parcel. And it is in the commercial area, so we're in the commercial character area of the future land use map. Nearby zoning, as you guys have seen, AG, OI, GC, there's some LI in nearby as well, or I'm sorry, I1. This property has historically been O'Kelly's Barbecue, which I think is how most people know it. And older zoning maps of this property, as we said before, have it zoned general commercial. However, staff could not find any minutes or supporting paperwork rezoning it to agriculture. Since an updated zoning map with this property zoned as agricultural was just adopted in February, staff is bringing this property through the formal process for an amendment. The owner of this property would like to rezone it so they can market to interested commercial buyers. The intent, again, is to sell with the previous parcel as well. It's on city water and gas, but there is currently a septic tank on there for sewage disposal at this point in time. I imagine if there is sewer available, that any buyer would much rather be on sewer than septic on a commercial property. Staff recommends approval of the applicant's request to rezone plus or minus 1.25 acres at 1511 North Cherokee Road, also known as tax parcel SC120034, from agricultural to general commercial. And if you guys want to, we can add that condition to combine the properties. I didn't have that in my staff report for this parcel, just for the last one.
Sure, makes sense. Real quick, this may be a Q public issue, but I'm looking,
Are you talking about that little carrot there?
yes.
Okay.
Not only that, but looking at the parcel map versus
The plat?
our zoning map, there's an extra parcel between that. Between 1515 and the O and I zone north of that. There appears to be, I mean,
Oh, I see
no,
what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the carrot.
Yeah.
That
I
looks
thought you were
like-
talking about this carrot here.
No, I'm aware of that, but the carrot on the O and I, it looks like a mapping, maybe a parcel boundary issue.
Yeah, I don't know that we have that in our, well,
It is, they've identified it as a,
yeah, it's like, oh, it might be, okay, it looks like, I don't know if you can see that very well on the screen, but it looks like there might be a cell tower or some sort of tower. I don't know if you
I
can
see the lattice
the
structure.
yeah, you can see the shadow.
I see the shadow of the lattice.
So
Yeah.
that may be what it is.
It is a tower. I've driven by there 1,000,001 times. And that's
As have
why
I.
seen it. Okay. Wow, okay, so it is probably not a platted parcel, but a deeded parcel for
yeah.
the tower itself. Okay, interesting. And, all right. Any questions for Ashley about this item? Hearing,
That's the railroad tracks it butts up against, right?
Correct.
so at this time, the applicant, Mr. Bales, would you like to come up and,
I think I already said my piece. I don't know if there's anything else I can say.
yes, ma'am, okay. We didn't have anybody signed up to speak for, but we did have Ms. Davidson. Did you want to speak again? You're welcome to, or we,
That is what it's my understanding, if you don't mind.
yes, please come up.
Oh, okay. That all of the properties from the,
On the other side of the gym, what did you call that business?
30,
701?
35 off or something?
Okay, all the way down are all on septic, including 1515.
Okay,
And we don't want to forget about the easement issue across, the driveway.
Yes,
there,
ma'am.
Where I guess that lot is landlocked.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, no one else has signed up to speak opposed? We'll close the public hearing. This is a unique situation, and I talked myself hoarse at the last one. So, yeah, yes,
We have our plat, and our plat shows that there is a 30-foot easement there now to travel between 1501, 1511, and 1515 to get to what was the barbecue place.
Yeah, I think at one point in time, there was a property swap that happened to capture that easement that's shown on Miss Davidson's plat. I don't have that plat with me, but if you bear with me.
please.
So I believe at one point in time, I'm trying to speak up so I can get captured. This little portion here was swapped with this back portion there. I don't know if it, I think it was done by deed, so
Yep.
there's no like platted record of it.
Sure.
But Barbara and I did find where it was talked about in a deed, and the plat that was referenced is a plat included in the application where it's kind of like all weird carrots. So I
Yep.
think that's the access point, but I don't think it's drawn correctly on Key Public.
Makes sense, yeah.
And
'Cause
sometimes that just happens.
it does. And they're trying to draw from points that are described on a legal document, not a CAD document. But with the,
But with any of those conditions that I propose, you propose, we can solve that access
Right.
issue definitely.
if the two parcels are combined, then that 1511 has road frontage. Therefore, access would be brought through from 1511. The remnant easement, whether it's a recorded easement or a gentleman's agreement, that's a civil matter.
Absolutely.
And whether that's honored after the combination, that's really between the property owners. But what say the commission members?
So I definitely think we need to combine them into one parcel.
We're married, we're already combined.
The tax parcels, not the human parcels.
Yes. But we agree.
I mean, it's in that character area. So, I mean, we need to place a condition about buffer. And what else were we considering? We can't address the easement. That's a civil matter.
Yep. And you said like auto sales or gas station require special use permit?
Yes, any type of like auto sales, or gas station can be, I'm not sure about convenience store, but gas stations or auto service repair shop or something like that would require special use under the new code.
And auto repair falls in that as well?
Yes,
Okay.
minor and major.
So those would be some of those that are, in my opinion, and please share if y'all are thinking elsewhere, those types of uses, commercial uses, would have the most externalities, most negative impacts on adjacent property based on trips per day, based on their nature, and based on hours of operation. I don't have the table of permitted uses in front of us to look and pick and choose, but if that is a use that requires a special use permit, if the applicants had a buyer that wanted to do that thing, that type of use, it'd have to come back before us for consideration and mayor and council.
Well, but I also think that there's consideration because any large chain restaurant, especially those that serve alcohol, Chili's, TGI Fridays, all of those, I mean, those would have late hours and would definitely impact
Yep.
the residential property next to them as well. And I'm sure that the restaurants are included in general, in GC.
That is correct, but I will also say the auto sales and repairs and stuff is allowable in light industrial, which is to the south of that property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to bookend them.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, and you got drive-through restaurants as well.
Mm.
Taco Bell,
Ugh,
that'd be good there.
stop it.
All right.
Taco Bell's not good anywhere.
Yes, it is. Nonetheless, Senora, any thoughts? Well, I mean, combine the two, you're almost at 2 acres.
Yeah.
2 acres would be large enough for probably a 2,000 square foot user with parking, detention, even if it stays on septic. For commercial septic, it has to be a larger field area.
I mean, that QT in Covington's not sitting on much more property than that.
So, I mean, yeah, a lot could go there. And that's the concern about how to protect the neighbors. And I'm sure the applicants, they they wanted to be respectful of their neighbors as well.
What type of buffer would be required to be there? That's the thing.
Well, that's a very good question. You know, when I think buffer, I think something planted like evergreens. You bring up a good point, because if we're not specific to state that, you know, an evergreen buffer planted 6 foot high at the time of planting, double row or something, then that opens up to interpretation. What are your thoughts? Something.
Me living beside there.
I'm sorry, can you turn on your microphone?
Me living, I'm thinking about me living beside that with the buffer. I know it's saying that they live there 6 months out the year and they're out of town the other 6 months out the year. But what time of the year am I living there? And at a certain point in time, business get pretty busy. And with the buffer being there, that's kind of noisy or busy for me.
Yeah, and the whole idea of the buffer is try to help reduce the noise they hear from outside their home and inside, and also any light pollution that may shine through. So that's the idea of, that's why in my mind I thought planted, but you bring up, you know, what I heard you say is, you know, maybe a fence type buffer may be more palatable, or maybe limit those negative impacts even more. I'm not sure. That's what's good having about this discussion. Adolphus, what say you?
I agree also. For instance, like the one they have, like going towards the London, they got it's a steel wall.
Oh yes, that sound wall.
Yeah, that sound wall.
I don't think I'm talking like that.
I don't think anybody's gonna put an airport
There's
next
a
to
lot
it.
of traffic come through there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of traffic come through there.
And I imagine where it's at now, even the applicant's residents, that when people live there, they heard a lot of the same traffic, and I'm sure when the truck route was put in, now it turned into a 4-way, I'm sure they hear it quite considerably. I'm sure that the neighbor hears it as well.
They're gonna take something to the extreme, because where I stay on West High Tower.
Yeah, it's a busy street.
We used to get a call every 30 minutes. Now we get them every 3 seconds.
Yeah,
And it's what?
yeah. And it's not like your house is sitting back off the road like the neighbor's house. Very similar. And being that this goes into a state route, Highway 11, it's a major arterial. It's not a collector like West High Tower. Glenda?
Well, like she said, we're gonna need some kind of buffer there, because when I came from Winter the other day, and the cars were going so fast, you know not to look off the road. Before you know it, you're right there ready to veer off.
Yep.
But the car behind you is on your bumper, so you can't slow down to look to make sure nobody's coming that way.
From the
So you
intersection.
gotta figure out, I mean, just in that area right there now.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I don't know what the solution, I don't know what you do.
Well, I think I could potentially make a motion.
I'm ready to hear.
Okay. So y'all let me know if you think it needs work. So I think we could approve the rezoning on both parcels with the following conditions. 1, that both tax parcels be combined into one parcel. And 2, that as long as the property directly to the south, specifically 1501 North Cherokee, as long as it remains residential, the commercial property, the building, whoever buys that property, must maintain a vegetated buffer, not less than 6 feet at time of planting, tall, and at least twice the minimum recommended buffer listed in the UDC has to be adhered to.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Okay. I'm sorry, that was ugly. I know.
Just the second part.
She was writing it down, I'm trying to write it.
Me too.
The vegetative buffer needs to be at least 6 foot at time of planting. And B,
This is, just so we're clear, this is just for 1511, right? The vegetative buffer part?
Well,
No.
We'll,
Yeah.
it'll be the same condition for both 15.
The vegetative buffer worries me that close. We just gotta make sure that we're not gonna block sight distance.
Right, site
Yeah.
distance supersedes,
Yeah.
right, as far as. the
Yeah.
okay, well, I said
separation.
it was going to be combined into one parcel. That's part of the
Yeah.
condition. So however that works. Okay, so let me work on that. 6 foot at time of planting, at least twice the depth recommended in the, or required in the UDC, allowing for adequate sight distance for safety. About that. Does that make sense?
That made a lot of sense, great job.
That's why you keep me.
I paid the big bucks. Okay, we have a motion. Do we hear a second? Okay, so we have Valerie made a motion, Adolphus seconded. This is for rezoning request at 1511 North Cherokee, rezone from AG to GC. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. So that motion passed unanimously, approval with those two conditions. Now we'll go back and open back up rezoning request 2023-01 for 1515 North Cherokee. We heard the request. I'll ask that we have a motion to take it off the table and open it back up.
Make a motion, take off table.
Okay? So Adolphus motions to remove from the table. Signora seconds. All those in favor? Signify by raise. All right, thank you. Unanimous. So, back to the discussion of this item number 1. Ms. Waller, would you like to make the recommendation?
I'm going to repeat that motion.
Okay. So, let me see if I can
Okay, go
I
ahead.
can repeat that. So as a recommendation to approve the rezoning request from R15 to GC with two conditions. One, to combine this property and property at 1511 North Cherokee into one parcel. And as long as 1501 North Cherokee is residential use, vegetative buffer 6 foot high at the time of planting, twice the depth of the required in UDC, with the adherence to site distance,
Allowance.
for site distance. That was the motion with conditions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So Ms. Waller made the motion. Do I hear a second? Ms. Linda Brown seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you. So, folks, that was a lot of confusion up here, but maybe it'll make sense. The recommendation to the mayor and council is to approve both items with two conditions. Condition that the parcels be combined into one. That would alleviate the road frontage and accessibility, and the planted buffer at time of development, as long as 1501 is residentially used. That buffer is 6 foot high at time of planting, and twice the depth of the requirement in the UDC. If you have any questions, Ms. Davis will answer them.
What is, I understand the height,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is the regular depth?
The width of the buffer,
Yes.
The width of the buffer, we'd probably do 20 feet.
well,
I'd have to look in the code.
so the UDC,
The
that
UDC says 20 foot.
Yeah.
is 20 foot, so the condition that we recommend would be twice that, so it'd be a 40 foot wide, 6 foot high, and that's only be required at the time of development. So, you know, when you sell it, that person who develops it would be required to put that in as long as 1501 is
Remains
used
residential.
residential. Okay. Moving.
You'll get that in a letter to provide to any potential buyers.
Okay. So, moving on. Now, you folks won't hurt our feelings if you leave. You're welcome to stay. We have 2 other public hearings. It may be of interest to you. So, moving on to item D, it's consideration of adoption of the proposed Unified Development Code. Ashley?
So this presentation is going to be pretty similar to what we did last get together last month. I can go through it slide by slide again, or we can kind of just hit what's been updated since last month.
If you don't mind, let's just talk about what's been updated since last month.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the process there, we've talked about that, the reason for doing it. This has remained the same. The reason I kept this in there is because we also have the proposed zoning map as well. So we just combine all the business districts together, and then the abbreviations would change to LI and HI instead of I1 and I2. Nothing has changed in PUD. The downtown corridor overlay, I'm sorry, I'm getting so much feedback. There was an update. We added in a 0 lot line to this section, and we cross-referenced it in the bulk standards table, since this is our downtown area, so commercial zones could have that kind of 0 lot line and keep in keeping with the aesthetic of this area.
There is a separation of buildings, correct?
Yes, that's required by,
That are on Sockville, yeah.
Yeah,
Fire code requires
yeah.
a building code.
right.
Okay.
We've talked about the traditional neighborhood overlay, use modernization, that's all pretty much the same. We did update, in accordance with Senate Bill 213, the provision has been added to section 3.1.2.d and 11.3.2 to allow for the replacement of any pre-existing manufactured home, so that they can replace it, even if it is a non-conforming use, they can update that instead of living in an older model manufactured home, and that's a state law now. There's just a footnote that's updated in the district regulations that talks about the setbacks in district overlays, like the downtown corridor overlay. And for non-conforming lots of record, we did update it to include alternative standards for deficient lots of record for single-family attached uses as well as detached. So specifically, there's one area of the city that's zoned R&D, and we've gotten questions about duplexes over there, but they don't meet the minimum lot standard for, they don't meet, under the proposed code, they don't meet the minimum lot standard, even though they do under the current code. So it's just something to add in so we don't create lots that are unbuildable. Okay. This is all pretty much the same, ethics and guidelines for review bodies, review and approval process. We've got procedure summaries, community meetings. I want to point out, though, we have been speaking with the state about certificate of appropriatenesses. We've got some updates pending on their written comments back to us. So I've got our consultant here today too, if you have any questions about that, but we just have to all kind of relook at our state law when it comes to historic preservation. For procedural updates, Scott, I think this was one of your comments as well. For appeals for mayor and council decisions in section 13.11.6, a reference to a petition for review has also been added in addition to the writ of, my Latin is not good, process in reference to both House Bill 1405 and House Bill 916, the former referencing the writ and the latter referencing the petition for review. So there's just some conflict of language in the state legislature, so we included both to cover us. This has remained the same, the review and where the public hearings are held, 2 public hearings instead of the 1 required by the state. The only thing that may change after our conversations with the Historic Preservation Division is the certificate of appropriateness might just switch the decision making to Historic Preservation Commission instead of them having as a recommendation body.
Talk about that for a moment. What in the text would grant staff the decision-making, because I know there's some in state HPD, there is some allowances for staff review and approval.
Right. That's what we were trying to kind of cover in our code, but I think this, if we put it in this table, even though the text technically governs over the table, we just need to amend this table just a hair, just to make sure it matches with what the state legislature says. But there is some room, like you said, for administrative approval. We do that now with fences, I think
Steps.
replacements. Yeah, some stuff we review at a staff level.
And like material.
Yeah. But we just want to attempt to keep our CLG status, so we just need to make sure that we're matching up with that. So we're awaiting written comments back from the state on that.
Okay.
Planning process, it's just done administratively like almost every other community I've ever seen, instead of going through several different boards for several different steps. It's just going to be all done in-house. Tree preservation, all of this stuff remains the same from when we talked last. However, tree board had a called meeting after our last meeting to discuss some updates to be made. So these are all the updates. So section 7.3.3 has been revised for the following. We clarified that a tree survey is to be prepared by an ISA certified arborist, forester, surveyor, or landscape architect. We struck the ability to relocate trees on a development site upon recommendation from the tree board because they say like the survival rate is not good for relocation. We revised any references to inch requirements. I think it just needed some cleaning up to reflect non-residential is 100 inches and residential is 50 inches per acre, the standards that we set forward. We've also revised references to specimen tree replacement to require for every 1 inch removed of a specimen tree, 2 inches are required to be replaced for removal of any specimen tree. Granted, there's also in the text, you only have to replace up to 60%, and then that other 40% goes into the tree bank if you can't replace it based off your lot. Section 7.3.9.8.3 and 4 have been updated to require the minimum tree to be counted toward density requirements is 4 inches. Section 7.3.14 revised to remove tree locations in chart with the authority granted to the arborist to cite trees based on site requirements of each species. And we also have a potential update, and feel free to give your guys' input on this as well, to remove the tree species list from the code and have it referenced in there. That way, if for whatever reason the list changes, we don't have to go through the ZPL. Yeah, we don't have to go through all these steps to change a tree list. Yeah. So I think I've seen that done in other communities where it's not codified, but it is referenced in the code. So we could administratively kind of update it upon recommendation, of course, from our arborist. Yeah. So that was something that some of the tree board members entertained, was removing that from the code and just kind of having it separately referenced.
That's required the minimum tree to be counted towards density requirements is 4 inches.
Instead of 2.
That's bravo.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, our tree board really dug into this document, and we sat right here in this room, round tabled it, and
that's I know some nurseries like nearby, like Jacks Creek and White Oak, a lot of times they have to take a lot of convincing to dig a 4-inch, and a lot of times they won't do that in the summertime. That's great job. That's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. Parking has remained the same. We just added, if you guys remember, our only update was taking out the EV readiness requirement, which required any parking lots over 30 spaces were required to lay conduit, not put in like the parking space. They just had to lay conduit. We took that out. We also added the personal transportation vehicle, aka golf carts, to our parking table to make sure we incorporated that, since you can't do that here. So that is pretty much all of the updates that I have. Like I said, we're waiting on some potential updates from the state from HPC, but other than that, I really don't think there will be any change between now and mayor and council. Also, I would like to, I know I saw Tom in the audience as well. We did want to invite the chairmans of the 3 boards that this affects to the work session to also discuss this with the mayor and council too, before final approval, if you guys were available. So that would be Scott, Tom, and Creenan.
When is that?
That would be June 1st, so next week.
Are there any questions of the UDC that you guys have of Ashley?
I mean, there's a lot in there. So several of these are potential updates, right?
Just the HPC stuff is potential.
Okay. So other than that, everything is the way it's absolutely going to be with no changes.
Based on direction from mayor and council, yes.
Okay. So if there were to be other changes proposed, would it come back to us? Or if we recommend it tonight, no matter what changes, it doesn't come back to us before mayor and council?
It would, if you guys recommend tonight, it would not, it would just go to mayor and council. Besides the HPC stuff, like I said, I don't foresee any other changes. We've kind of gone through this with all of our boards and you know, it's been a really long process,
Yeah.
which any code rewrite is going to be. And we really want to get this passed so we aren't basically starting a new year with potentially 2 codes. We've already had developers kind of asking us, hey, when is that code going to be passed and all that kind of stuff, and working under the assumption that it's going to be passed in the summertime.
Sure.
But that's why we want to invite the chairmans of the board to kind of talk through any other recommendations, so we would have, if there's any other changes to be made, we could do it before the last public hearing.
What time is that work session?
I believe it's at 6:30.
Okay.
So,
But I want to reiterate too, this is a living document, so there's always opportunity for change in it. It just and that any of those changes would come back before you.
right. So, you know, I'm probably a little bit gun shy because, you know, things that jump out to me are things like attached multifamily housing, things like apartments, things like auxiliary structures where every single person can have a guest house in their backyard.
If there are a lot of those, yeah.
Right, a lot of those things seem to have changed, and I guess I just don't understand.
When did they change? From the last time we talked to now, or before then? No, you're fine.
Probably from before, probably from some before. I mean, and it could just be that all those things need to be included, but, you know, I'm watching what's happening in Covington with
Explosion
horror
housing.
about the number and the quality of apartments going up. And I'm very concerned. You know, Social Circle is poised to be on the edge of an industrial district, and we have a unique opportunity to provide a high-end small community where people want to come and live and work within a certain demographic, right? And if we, you know, approve all of this and follow Newton's example, you know, we're just going to end up being a sea of apartments and not attract the type of people that
Right.
you know, give back to their community rather than take from their community. And I just, I think we need to grow the right way and not in the fastest way. And my whole trepidation is based on controlled and well thought out growth for our future rather, because, you know, I'm raising my kid here and I want her to, you know, remain close, and I don't I don't want this to look like Monroe did 20 years ago when we first moved here and nobody would go downtown because it was so terrifying.
Right.
So those are just kind of the things that I see, and that probably isn't going to make one hill of beans difference.
Well, I would like to say that under the current code, it is very difficult to regulate because it is just, it's really old and it's kind of mumbly jumbly.
And I don't disagree with that at all.
But I think this is a huge step in the right direction for responsible growth, is having a clear and concise code. So I think we are making steps, and we have a department now. That's also something that wasn't in place before. So I think that's, I hear what you're saying about responsibly growing, and
Because we're going to grow regardless.
I get it.
But I don't want it to be a painful process because, we don't live in Atlanta for a reason.
Right. Absolutely.
So, for what it's worth. That's really all I have.
Okay, well,
Just a rant.
I've got a few things, but I'm going to open up the public hearing. I do have someone to speak for Mr. Tom Brown.
Thank you. Tom Brown, 169 North Dogwood Avenue. And first of all, I want to say I am in favor of a unified code for the city. I know it can streamline things that we do in preservation and y'all do in planning and zoning. We just want to do it right because that's going to be for years, if not decades, what we're working from. So, but I am in favor of a unified development code for sure. In particular, I know Chairman Scott, you made some recommendations or comments that I had seen. Three different areas, I believe. The uses table has some things that are prohibited, and so why, if they're prohibited, why have them in the table? And I think there's even some other qualifications in that table that may need adjusting. I agree with that. Another section with housing types that lack architectural standards. If that concern needs to be addressed somehow, I agree with that to be done. Accessory dwelling units that could result in multifamily developments on a single lot. That might be a concern for how that can impact HOAs and other lifestyle in a community if a lot of folks choose to put another building behind them that qualifies as a residence. And that might, it mimics a multifamily development. So I saw those points. I just want to say that I support them being looked into and resolved. Also, a couple of folks on the Preservation Society, Dina Johnson's board, they asked me, they could not be here tonight, so they asked me to bring a couple of comments with me on that they're valid. One of them is, they're on my phone, one of them is the cost. What has the cost to the city been for the consulting and the legal fees to put all this together? I realize you may not have that in front of you right now, but since it may not be available at the second public hearing in June, I think that number could be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can definitely have that. I can definitely look into that.
Okay.
And hopefully provide that by the work session.
Okay.
I can tell you the consulting cost is significant.
Okay.
And the longer this process takes, the higher that cost goes.
I understand.
In turn, that goes with the attorney's fees too, because
Right.
they've got to review a 300-something page document,
Yeah.
word for word. So,
Yeah.
the cost has been significant. The longer this takes, the higher the cost goes.
I follow you and I agree. I think that we just kind of look at it from a taxpayer standpoint. The public might want to know what was it cost to put all this together. A very worthy cause, but what is cost involved to do it? So they did ask about that. I'll pass that along. Also, there's a stipulation for preservation ordinance that allows a property owner to petition the city to be withdrawn from the historic district. Their question is, when that happens, if it happens, should that property owner participate or bear some of the burden for the legal fees and other to be removed from? Whatever the answer might be, but they did want to have that question asked. So, if it happens at all. The only other thing I would say, and Ashley, you've already touched on it, we had a very good meeting this week with the state office, and I was in that meeting. So we're very close to being in compliance with the State Historic Preservation Act. We're very close to doing that anyway, and I would certainly hope that that can happen. There's a lot of benefits in that. Grant money, access to other resources that may not be monetary, but they have great value because we'll be complying with that act, and we would maintain our certification as a certified local government. Quite a few advantages in that, so I have high hopes that we can do that. I think that's all of it. And the statement about growth and preserve, I totally agree with that. We want to grow. We can also honor historic preservation and grow. It's not one or the other, it's both. And they can actually complement one another very well. But I know we moved here, and others have moved here because of the quality of life that we offer here, and some of that is the buildings along the historic district. Some of it is just small town, I don't mean that demeaning, small town, hometown atmosphere. You can't get that everywhere. And if we overbuild, that can go away pretty quickly. So I think the union of growth with preservation is a good match. And I certainly hope that we can maintain that. I believe that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Sure.
There are 4 minutes remaining. Is there anybody that didn't get here in time that would like to speak either for or against? I do have one person that would like to speak against that signed up. Is there anybody that would like to speak for? If not, Mr. Doug Hawkins, you're signed up to speak in opposition. Please come forward.
I don't know whether he would tell me to be against. I have questions. My name is Doug Hawkins. I live at 920 Lakewood Drive. I've been here about 50 years, and I've watched several iterations of the ordinance through the time that I've been here. And this one's been somewhat, I call it fast and furious with what's happening now. Not totally opposed to it, but I have some questions, or one question in particular. There's a reference in there for the impervious surfaces about 70 to 80%. This seems a little bit high considering we were working with something like 25 and 35%. So is that, that's a maximum, I think you allow 75 to 80%. I guess my question would be, under what conditions can you possibly imagine in a town this size that you would use 80% impervious surfaces? If you keep the tree board, just the canopy of the trees would almost prevent that. So I think that's a little bit of an overkill for a town this size and for where we are. If we were downtown Decatur or downtown Alpharetta or downtown Atlanta, I can see that. I think that's an overkill. It's opening up something that we're not prepared for. We're not prepared for even 25 or 35% impervious surfaces in the city. We don't have the infrastructure to handle it. We don't have the money to handle it. And I think it's ridiculous to assume that this would be a good idea. I guess a question I would have is, if it exists, can an existing business automatically start paving the surfaces and go to 70%, 75%, 80%? Can they do that, Ashley?
They would be able to under the new code, yes.
Yes, they'll be able to do that. Mayor, are we prepared to handle that kind of water, stormwater? Pardon?
Can't answer that.
You can't answer that. Can you answer that, Mr. Gates?
Mr. Hawkins, I believe we probably have a couple areas in the city that are at 80 or more, given our downtown corridor of buildings. But outside of that, I'm going to venture to say, no, our public infrastructure cannot support if 2/3 of our properties were 80% impervious, simply from the fact, like you pointed out, stormwater runoff, it goes somewhere. The city doesn't maintain detention ponds or drainage easements located off the right-of-way. I'm aware of severe flooding that occurs on the right-of-way in Squirrel Woods and has for a number of years. And the previous city manager worked diligently with the developer down in Lakewood to rectify that for that area. I have been in that area, and while it has improved, stormwater is not it still floods. Not as bad as it did, but I don't believe, and as you're talking this out, I'm thinking of how sites develop. I'm thinking of the large industrial area that is to our east at Hightower and the truck route. If that area, they've got a variance request to the EPD to encroach upon the state waters buffers and fill in some of those. If those areas were 70 and 80% impervious, the sheer amount of stormwater runoff that the pond size to handle that, Mr. Hawkins, you're well aware of communities, and Ashley, you're well aware of it as well. There's communities to our west that have to charge a stormwater utility fee. As most people call it, a rainwater tax. It's not a tax, it's a utility fee to create stormwater utility departments to handle urban runoff that occurs on public property. I don't think Social Circle is ready to become an MS4 community where we have to have a stormwater utility fee. That was an item in our UDC that I simply overlooked, and I'm glad that you found it. Someone with the engineering background like yourself. I'm not aware of what districts that allow 78%. Maybe it's just in our general commercial. Ashley, can you speak to that?
Yes, so I also have our consultant here, and we were discussing maybe potentially changing those because some of these are a little high. So the conservation district is 25%, ag is 40%. This is maximum.
Yes.
70% in R25, 80% in R15, 80% in RMD, 85% in O&I, 85% in business. Light industrial is 90%, and heavy industrial is 90% as well.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Hawkins, I want to say thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that I overlooked. Those maximum percentages, like you said, are more apt to be found in urban and even more suburban areas than us. Actually, what's the minimum lot size in R25 is 25,000 square feet?
Correct.
And 70% of that can be impervious?
Correct.
And impervious being rooftops, driveways, patios, even gravel parking areas get compacted to where it prevents stormwater from permeating and becomes impervious surface, and you have runoff. That is eye-opening.
Recent studies just showed to us that that's in the range of 25 to 28% in the communities that we have here. I brought to the city manager's attention a few months ago the area out here on Thurman Bacchus where those storage buildings are, and he assured me that would be held at 35%. Well, if you look at that particular parcel right there that's been cut, the whole thing's paved. There's a building, and everything that's there is paved.
Concrete, yep.
That's approaching what you're looking at. Now, that was originally laid out with subsurface drainage, that it was going into a adjacent lake that was owned by David Johnson, I believe. There are no provisions that were really made for that. It changed over, it changed hands, it got paved. Who was controlling it? Who was watching it? How did it happen? If you have it at 70%, are you going to have a situation where everybody now says, hey, I can have a parking lot? The city did. I can have a parking lot. I can pave some more things. Now you've got the tree board that wants to grow trees, which I commend them. But with 80%, the tree canopy is as big as the root structure, and it can't get water, it can't survive. There's no sense in having it. It's going to be a plastic tree. So I'm just asking you to take a look at some of these things that seem to be, I call it fast and furious, but I'm really concerned about them. I'm concerned about, one thing that I'm concerned about, Ms. Davis, is not for you, but I'm concerned about the next person that replaces you. We don't address what qualifications that a person in your job has, but there's a tremendous amount of liability for the city for the decisions that you make. I appreciate the job that you're doing, and I think that you're qualified, but what if the next person is not? We need to consider the fact that we've got a good review board here that's reviewing, we've got a council that's making decisions, but there are a lot of decisions that have been left in your hands. Beg you to please consider that. And I beg this board to please consider the fact that there's still some more work that needs to be done on this. If it takes, a reanalysis of some of these things, then do it. I know Leslie's talking about it takes a lot of money, but we're spending $250,000, well, $500,000, I think, is budgeted for your department this year. Probably a very worthwhile thing if we grow the way that we're talking about growing. And $500,000 is a very minor amount to pay to control what's going to happen to our city. But the next person that comes in Ashley's place may not be as concerned as she is. So the board's still got to be doing that job. You got to keep a handle on it, and you got to watch for 70 and 80% impervious surfaces and some of these other things that are there. They aren't going to go away, and all of a sudden we're going to have them. And I apologize for being here, it's just because I don't even like to be here, period. But this was something I think is important. I really do.
Well, thank you for
appreciate
taking
your time.
Thank you, sir.
So I do have, that brings a question. So if somebody oversteps that, say somebody comes in and they're supposed to be at a maximum 70% impervious surface, right?
Right.
And then they just pour concrete all over everything and do whatever, and it's later found to be, out of compliance. Who oversees that and what can be done?
That is addressed in the violation section, which I believe is, oh my goodness. Yep.
11.
Yes, that is correct. I'm backwards on some of my pages. I've been flipping to it too much. I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, Article 11 is violations, penalties, and enforcements.
So there is a mechanism in
Yes, there's also appeals in place for any decision that's made by the community development director or interpretation that's made by the community development director or city manager or any staff referenced to appeal that decision and go before mayor and council to appeal that decision.
Okay.
So there are mechanisms in place that, the person in this position of the city manager isn't the end all be all. I think the impervious surface ratio thing is a really good call out, and we're gonna work to address that.
So there are potential changes to be made here.
Now that was brought to our attention, yes.
Okay.
Ashley, at this point, we'll close the public hearing. When is the anticipated adoption?
June 20th.
Okay.
Hopefully quickly.
So I know the city is undertaking this effort. I remember maybe I need to be one that the council takes action to remove. Been here so long. But I remember the previous couple city attorneys ago would draft an ordinance and it'd just go through and get adopted, and
Right.
very little thought of how it impacts other ordinances. And
I think that's the problem we're facing today.
It is, and the city council recognized that, and I applaud their efforts. That's to make this a document that gets us to the 21st century at least, and considers all the impacts. As I read the document, I can tell where certain individuals wrote parts of it, and you can see and understand their background. And I appreciate that, because it is a lot for one person to try to wrap their head around and write. It's also a lot to ask for one person or a small handful of people to review. I'm very appreciative of Tom and Creenan and Mr. Hawkins and others that I'm not aware of that have been bringing concerns to you and to the consultant, maybe to the mayor and council. I have voiced my concerns with my council member. I've written my concerns to the city council as a whole. The whole adage of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. My concerns that I've addressed is that we've worked in other places, we've lived in other places, we've seen other places. Social Circle, we can say it's special all we want, but it's only special to all of us that live here or that care enough to be involved. Every jurisdiction faces these growing pains, and this is a growing pain. But what I don't want us to lose sight of is the character that brought all of us to Social Circle for one reason or another. Some of us moved here. Some of us were lucky enough to be born here and lived all our lives here. I struggle with this because I do want us to be an inclusive community. And some of the things I see in the ordinances are that. But then I worry about that character that brought us here. I am concerned about the accessory dwelling units. As a professional planner, I disregard this idea of there's a housing crisis. There's not a housing crisis in America. There's an affordability crisis. But the affordability crisis is driven by the mortgage industry and the home builders associations across the country. I am concerned about the lack of architectural standards. As Mr. Hawkins pointed out, this body has made recommendations on how we want our houses to look coming into the city. And that's been done through conditions of zoning, been done through conditions of plat. I know some of the builders have not agreed with some of them because they look at that and they say, well, that's going to affect the bottom dollar. Well, yeah, it's going to affect the bottom dollar, but you, Mr. Builder, don't live here. We had a situation of a property owner and business owner who doesn't live here, who came before us and asked for forgiveness in terms of a variance because he went out and did a parking lot, started a building addition without first coming through the process, and then wanted to browbeat us by the jobs he's bringing here and how wonderful he is by bringing his business here, but yet he don't live here. He lives in a community somewhere else. So that's some of the things that I'm concerned with. And then, like Tom brought up, we do have a table of permitted uses. And that's good that we clarified versus having the various uses allowed within each zoning district. I'm happy we're slimming down the zoning districts. It makes it more manageable for staff and more manageable for the property owners and developers who want to come here. But I still have concern about you identify uses within that, but they're not permitted. So they give someone the perception of, oh, this is allowed. So I still have those grave concerns. I'm glad that actually you and the consultant worked on addressing House Bill 1405. I'm facing that where I work. I look at that and it talks about quasi-judicial bodies. The Planning Commission is not a quasi-judicial body because we don't make decisions, we make recommendations. The Historic Preservation Commission, they make decisions, but they're not a quasi-judicial body because they don't hear zoning requests. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that you guys have been proactive to address the writ of certiorari versus de novo and how appeals are going forth de novo. But I still am concerned, about those that I've listed. What Mr. Hawkins talked about with impervious, I'm glad to hear your open-mindedness about, hey, you know what? That is something maybe we overlooked. Let's step back. I'm happy to participate in that work session next week at 6:30 p.m. And I appreciate the council's efforts to include us. But at this time, if you're asking for a motion, I don't know how my colleagues on the Planning Commission view this, but I can't put forth a motion to approve when I still have these concerns. And I may never agree with everything in the document, and that's fine. That's what makes a community. We don't always agree, but we keep moving forward for the betterment of the community. But I can't vote for it in the draft it's at as a positive recommendation, and that's where I sit at this point. And it's open for discussion. Sorry.
Like, what do we do now?
Sorry, no. Anyone's welcome to make a motion, anyone's welcome to make deliberation. That's what this is about.
I am going to ask that you guys make a motion so we can get this approved before the moratorium expire. That is the goal, and we've already extended the moratorium 3 times, I think, maybe even 4. So they're set to expire June 30th. And like I pulled up, we've been at this for 1.5 years. We've been paying consultants, we've been paying lawyer fees for 1.5 years. And I understand your concerns, Scott, and we've talked about them, and we've talked about them in work sessions too. The ADUs, I don't think is changing. The keeping of the vape shops and prohibited uses in there, I don't think that's changing. We've addressed some of your other concerns, I think. The impervious surface ratio, I'm happy to take a look at and change, and if you guys want to make a recommendation with those changes, that's fine with me, but I would ask that you guys make a recommendation, even if it is.
So, what's driving the accessory dwelling units, if you don't mind me asking?
Rebecca, I think this was started by some of the input of the process, which I wasn't really a part of, so I can't really speak to that, but I think Rebecca can, and she's our consultant from CPL.
Hi, everyone, Rebecca Kiefer. So the accessory dwelling unit is yes, addressing just the overarching policy concern of housing and looking for options there. So that was something that we put forth as a recommendation in the ordinance. I don't know that it was somebody particular said, I want ADUs, but when that came forward through the public, through the process, we identified that as a potential solution.
I think it also goes to the affordability and also the aging population of mother-in-law suites, over the garage apartments, like that kind of thing. The intent is obviously not to create multifamily units on single-family lots. And of course, you have to have, adequate land to build a detached unit. I'm so sorry. But, so every discussion that we've had in a work session in regards to ADUs, it has not been shot down. So that's just, I don't think those concerns are ever going to be addressed unless it becomes a problem. Then we need to, kind of take a step back. But I've seen it active in communities before where it hasn't been a problem.
So, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't put it back. I am aware that there's some legacy properties that have ADUs. They started out as mother-in-law suites. And one potential solution, if the council, mayor, if that is the intent, is to be able to address the mother-in-law suite idea, one potential solution is not the accessory dwelling unit. The potential solution is an expansion of the footprint of the existing structure in form of an addition. If the idea is that we want to age in place, you want to give the mother-in-law an opportunity to live on site. Why separate the mother-in-law? Well, maybe some people may want to do that in their own structure off away. Why not put them, or the mother, do an addition, because that builds it as part of the buildable area of the primary structure. For example, single-family house on 2 acres in a subdivision, instead of an ADU, do an addition to the house. It can be done with the shared common wall. They can still have their own kitchen, own living room, have their own independence, but they're part of the house itself. The concept of the mother-in-law unit is good, but the execution where places have failed, and I've seen this, I've seen the good and the bad, is mother-in-law passes away. I've got this unit. I'm going to rent it. Okay, well then, if you're in a single-family detached development and you're introducing that multifamily element to it, that's just eroding that single-family detached. And that's been the fabric of our community, single-family detached, and the fabric of most of post-World War II America. And again, I see this as an attack on that single-family detached. Now that's my opinion. Again, trying to provide solutions, not just be an antagonist that points out problems as a potential solution. If the intent was to allow for that, then let's do away with that and emphasize that attached, expansion of a dwelling unit is encouraged or allowed where it fits within the buildable area of the lot. I know that was a discussion I had just real briefly with my council member, because I asked him point blank, where do you stand on this? And he said he thinks it needs some work, but his idea was to address just like that, the mother-in-law idea, not introducing multifamily, and he hadn't looked at it from that standpoint. And I mentioned, how about attaching it? He said, well, that's an option, that's an opportunity. So
the question I have to that is, how is that, what happens when mother-in-law passes on attached unit. You just have an extra bedroom. What if I want to rent that out with the kitchenette?
If you're gonna rent that out, that's part of your house. Are you so willing to rent out?
We have a property here that put 4 additions with kitchens on their house way back when, before probably zoning was even in place, and they do that. There are 4 separate tenants off of a main house.
That's called a boarding house now. But if I'm in my single family, I had a separate room that has a deficiency of kitchen, and I rent that out, I'm not blocking that off. It's still gonna have to have connectivity to my house. You know, I may rent it to some of y'all in here, but I'm gonna rent it to a stranger. That's the idea, but, you know, you're introducing that multifamily element. I get it, it's no easy answer, and that's why we need to talk through these things. And like I said, you know, this body may recommend approval, but I can't, you know, on my principles, I can't recommend approval for that. And we don't always have to agree.
Actually, on the accessory dwelling unit, I just want to make sure this is clear. Accessory dwelling unit itself is an accessory, that's the use. And there are characteristics of the use. So the way it's written right now is it dictates different requirements if you are doing it detached, and then requirements if it is attached. So it expressly allows that and gives you requirements based on whether or not it's attached or detached. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay. So I'm done talking. It's y'all's turn. You know, this is our document. And when it passes, it's going to be a lot to learn.
It is, and I mean, I don't know. It is a lot, and I understand that a tremendous amount of modernization and work has gone into it. And I could be reading this very wrong. But I feel like there are significant parts of it that are not concerned with protecting the character of the town. We, especially just like Mr. Hawkins brought up with a lot of the paving, there's a lot of consideration given to industrial and business uses, and very a smaller portion given to actual living. And maybe it's because, you know, we have the new developments, the new industry coming in, but there are people that still want to live here, and they still want to protect their the overall feel of the town, even as it gets larger. Just because it gets larger doesn't mean that we have to lose that feel. And it had not jumped out at me how much paving we can do and how much industry we have. And like we have the little slice of properties we were talking about tonight with all the different zonings in it. You know, all of that is protected because we have all these permitted uses, but there's still a long-term resident there that isn't having a whole lot of consideration given. And I understand they're in a corridor area, and they're in an entryway to the city, which is not a great place to be, but I don't know. And I mean, maybe all UDCs read that way. Maybe that only speaks to my lack of experience. This is the only town I've ever been involved with in this way.
I think what you're seeing is that there isn't very much in our current code that addresses those uses besides like what you can do and what you can't do.
Our current code, does not have a lot.
So I think that's kind of the difference that you're seeing is this does address a lot of those concerns, and it takes it's codifying.
And some of these may never come to pass.
Right. It's, you know.
I hope that some of them never ever do, but, yeah.
One quick note on the use table and having the fully permitted uses, just to give the background on that. So from a zoning administration standpoint, there's oftentimes going to be, somebody who comes to the city with a proposed use. If we stripped all of the code of fully prohibited uses and don't define them, then an interpretation has to be made about where those uses go. By expressly noting what they are and that they are prohibited, that makes it clearer and cleaner when that interpretation has to be made, that there is a place for that use to be interpreted. So that's kind of the purpose for that, because if you strip it, then it's more likely that an interpretation could be made that it's in an existing use that is allowed and defined.
There's a Latin term, and I'm sorry, I don't remember my days in Latin, but basically says if it's not stated, it's therefore prohibited. And a lot of tables are set up that way, that if it's not stated, it's therefore prohibited. The prohibited uses, now by leaving those in there identified as prohibited, the benefit of leaving those in there is if there was ever a change, an ordinance to amend, you're not having to identify and define it, that use. Our table of permitted uses gives the director, Ms. Davis, that discretion as far as if a use is not clearly defined, but it's similar to what's already permitted, she can grant that use. And I think that's part of what Mr. Hawkins was talking about the discretion. I know, for example, vape shops. Standalone vape shops are prohibited, but a corner of a gas station, they can sell vape products and whatever that entails. But the idea is that the shop itself, the standalone intended use, sole purpose is selling vape and vape equipment and things that go with it. Those are prohibited. Leaving that out of the table, I understand your point of view as to identifying it, defining it, and saying that it's strictly prohibited. That's definitely a different approach than I'm accustomed to, because I'm accustomed to if it's not included, it's therefore prohibited. I didn't look at all the prohibited uses. There's a handful I looked at. But are there any that, if we're going to follow that train of thought, are there any that need to be included that are maybe left out of that table? And if so, does that make your table now from 3 pages to 64 pages? Not really 64, but, does that expand it? That's all.
So I think vape shop is a good example by removing vape shop as one of the uses that is expressly stricken. That's kind of a policy, nod from City Council of we don't, this is not a use that we want allowed. If that was stricken and the definition is stricken, then by the nature of being able to evaluate and interpret a use, it could be, a current or future director says, that's retail, so that is allowed as a retail use. So that, there are probably some certain uses that it would be important to expressly list in there, and that's why we left some of those in. So yeah, certainly if there are some others that come to mind as you're evaluating that, then I think those are really good examples.
Thank you for that explanation. That does make a lot of sense with the retail, that someone later may look at that and say, it's a retail use, it's allowed in commercial, let's put it in there.
Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So how about the example for motels?
So that a hotel cannot, so a motel cannot try and say that they're a hotel.
Yeah.
And so, we can say, no, you are distinctly characteristics of a motel, and that is distinctly prohibited.
Okay.
This comes from personal experience. I've been burned.
Yeah, I have too. There's no other discussion. We do need a motion in order to continue moving on our agenda.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I'm ready to move to wholesale adopt, but I don't think it really matters since we are a recommending body only.
And I agree with that, but still,
I mean, it's incomplete. There's a lot of questions to be asked, a lot of answers to be got from it. And you don't wanna, I wouldn't approve it, and it's still a lot of questions that need to be answered.
I mean, if we recommend approval and they act on that recommendation and there's still questions, then there's no guarantee that any of those things will ever be addressed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And like you said, we are a recommending body. Now, it may be that if each one of you have specific concerns, I would encourage you to reach out and put those concerns to Ashley and to City Council to voice your concerns. You know, there is that work session. They may, you know, hypothetically, this board can recommend adoption or denial, and they have their legal right to do any of it. You know, we've seen before them, you know, not take the recommendation, and that's fine. That's why they're an elected body, to make those decisions. We don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you know, if you have an opportunity over the next few days before the 1st to send those concerns, maybe your city council member will look at that at a different point of view. If you still have concerns with it. You know, I've done that myself. And, you know, whether or not it means anything to them, it makes me feel that I voiced my concern. And maybe it wasn't that big of a deal to somebody else, but at least I had my say. Same thing with the public is, you know, we're not packing this room out. We were here last month as well. You know, talk about community character. The parade. I mean, how many communities can say that 2/3 of their citizenry come out to support a high school graduation? Graduates of 100 graduates?
160.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
160.
160.
Thank you. So, for every one graduate that was identified in that parade, we probably had 4 other members of the public come out to sponsor that. That's that community character that I'm concerned about, that I want to portray. But, you know, is this going to impact John Q. Public, who lives next door to you and I? No, because they're going to see something they don't like. What are they going to do? They're going to bitch to us about it. You know, that's what they do. You know, what should we say? Show up.
I know there's a lot of empty chairs.
But, you know, there is that work session. I'm optimistic in hearing what Ashley said about impervious surface. That's something that they're gonna put forth to amend. We may not get to see it again because the mayor and council, despite what our recommendation tonight may be, they're looking at adoption date, a drop dead date. And I understand it. And I think we all understand it, is they've got a fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers. They set a deadline, they set a budget to accomplish this. Well, whether we 100% agree with it or not, they're going to adopt it in June. That's my thought.
I mean,
We
yeah,
can
so it
only
doesn't really
hope that
matter.
our concerns that we have will impact their ultimate decision. And it may not, but that's what we live with. But we do need a motion tonight, so we can move to our next item. And if we go too much further, I'm gonna have somebody deliver some food.
Okay. Well, can we make a motion that says we recommend adoption once the existing concerns of the community are addressed in the work session?
Yeah, I don't think the concerns are gonna be addressed in the work session. Knowing that I just learned about the work session. I think.
You better get it together, Scott.
I think that's a broad statement to say.
It's a pretty open-ended motion.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. Ultimately, I think staff would like to hear a motion to recommend adoption so that they can move forward. Within the powers and duties of the planning commission,
Well, I mean,
I
they don't
think we have the ability to recommend a table. We have recommend to approve with conditions, or to deny. Do we still have the power to recommend a table? I don't remember.
You do, but I'm begging you.
In the current ordinance, she said, yeah, absolutely. In the current ordinance, do we have the authority?
Yeah, you have the ability to table, approve with conditions, or deny.
A lot swims around over here, sorry.
Trust me. I mean, they decide what they want anyway.
Right.
You say conditions, with conditions, at least they do know that we're thinking outside of the box, inside, and then there's an outside. So that means.
Do you guys want to hear our proposed impervious surface ratio recommendations really fast?
I would love that.
Rebecca, take it away.
Yeah, looking at it, I agree. Some of these look very high. And I think this is up for discussion, what you all feel appropriate, but I think putting something for you to react to would be good. So keep the CS 25, ag reduce from 40 in the draft to 30. The R25, I've been playing with that one because the lot sizes are so small, not wanting to cause a lot of issues for people being able to develop a reasonable amount. R25, I was suggesting maybe a 45%.
What is it currently?
70 in the draft. R15 is currently 80 and reducing that down to 40. And RMD is currently 80, recommending that down to 70. OI is currently 85, reducing that down to 80. Business, 85 to 80. And then the two industrial districts, because those are such larger parcels, they are more intensive, but because they're larger parcels, probably something significantly lower, like 50% is kind of what I was thinking.
From 90 to 50.
Rebecca, in the post-construction stormwater management part of the, and that might not be the term we use for this UDC, are we adopting the runoff reduction requirement that Metropolitan North Georgia
Yeah.
required of the,
The
what is it now, 11 counties?
yeah, where you have to, this is not my forte, where you have to justify that you can't meet the perk rates and all that.
That's correct. Yep. So, in a nutshell, the stormwater that leaves a site has to be detained for a period of time. What this Water Planning District, Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District established is that instead of water being detained, a portion of it has to meet runoff reduction. Meaning, what does that mean? It sounds good, it's a good word, it's fun to say. You're utilizing grass swells, utilizing berms, things that allow stormwater to infiltrate into the ground versus sit in a pond and discharge at a slower rate. The concern I have with the impervious surfaces, even at RMD at 70, and O&I 80 and business at 80, is meeting that runoff reduction if somebody's trying to maximize that impervious area. RMD, I'm thinking, what's the minimum open space requirement of RMD? Is it 20?
I think so. Let me confirm. And so those, I know those don't always have to match. It's just because the open space is a defined program open space, you could also have additional impervious above and beyond that. So yes, for multi-unit, for multifamily, it's 20% required open space.
Well, I think multifamily is not, it's a special use law. No, I'm sorry.
It's a
Too many codes.
I know, it's a limited use in RMD.
Yeah.
So that would, thinking new development, not existing. New development, I got a raw piece of land, perfect shape, no topographical hardships. RMD, I'm required to set aside 20% for open space.
Programmed open space, and then you could develop the site at a maximum, at least at what I just proposed to you, 70%. So that would leave an additional 10% that still has to be pervious, it just doesn't have to be programmed open
That's right.
space.
That can be done through your tree islands within the parking lot, your landscape strips, breaking up parking spaces.
And I think we do address green infrastructure, which is kind of like what you're talking about, like permeable parking lots and stuff like that in here too.
GILID.
Yeah.
Low impact development. I was thinking like the actual 200 square foot of in-cap tree islands between, 7 spaces. Like the 70%. Rebecca, what's your thought on for RMD taking that down to 60%?
I think we could look at it and kind of identify with that.
Okay.
I
don't mind.
Initially doesn't sound bad.
I don't mind looking at some of the other jurisdictions. Those are easy to find and see what other jurisdictions around us do. I know more populated areas.
Do a higher.
That's right. But other populated areas have problems that other populated areas have, and that's flooding, stormwater, things like that Mr. Hawkins was leading.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm going down a path and
Do those numbers at least feel a little better, like a lot more digestible, or?
in the conservation ag, R25, R15, I'm compartmentalizing how a site can develop. And then on the flip side of that, how an individual like myself, I'm only at about 15% impervious on my lot. And that's with an accessory structure, driveway, rooftop, patio. I couldn't imagine I had to sell my lawnmower if I went to 40%. I don't want to sell my lawnmower. I'm compartmentalizing, visualizing how that would fit, and knowing everything's like a puzzle. if I did it, the runoff impact was not so great on the neighbors and the public infrastructure. But if all the neighbors did it, that's the totality of it.
Right.
I think for those districts at 45 and 40, I'm personally okay because I can visualize that. The RMD, O&I, and the B district business at 70 and 80%, both of those, it gives me a little bit of pause. Knowing,
I'll ask you anything about downtown too.
yeah,
That's,
well, you're right. You know, downtown, we have the core downtown that is probably 90 and 100% on some of these parcels. I see the stormwater runoff effects we have. I mean, take for example, Sycamore, where the city just paid the lot next to JK Design. They got a flume that comes out of that lot. So the city's putting this stormwater back on to a private property owner because it's flowing back on JK Design's property because the inlet has not been maintained. Inlet's probably been there since, you know, Social Circle has been paved. Yes, that's right. And it, you know, and it's fullest, has never been maintained. And it's probably one of those property owner or city maintained. I look at that and I think, you know what? It's nice that we have paid parking now, but the other impacts. And maybe I'm thinking too much about it. That's programmed for, hey, we know the city knows they're going to start maintaining this. It may be, but that still gives me pause, especially for, like you said, I'm in O&I. Right now I'm at 10% impervious. And it never crossed my mind until now that, hey, I want more parking. But we have the maximum parking. So if you're at a 4,000 square foot building, if it's 4 spaces per 1,000 square foot max, well, I'm not going to park. I'm going to have it there as outdoor display or outdoor recreation. I don't know. I'm still a little concerned, but I think we're on the right path. And Rebecca, I appreciate you being here to come up off the fly with those.
amazing. She's been helping us. Like at the public input sessions, we were like going through concerns brought forth by not just the public, but city managers, by you guys, by the tree board, by HPC. And we were just typing it out and making changes and stuff because we didn't have that much public input. But I mean, I think these kinds of talks are great. I wish they would have been had at some of the stakeholder meetings and stuff like that, which I know not everyone can make, but you know, I think the beginning of this process really missed out on some of these really good conversations that
I would love to see, so OI and business are the only designations that have not gone down by at least 10%. So I would love to see them, instead of going from 85 to 80, I'd love to see them go from 85 to 75%. That would be my personal preference.
I am going to point out that neither of those have a minimum lot size. In shopping centers and stuff like that, you're gonna get close to 80 with parking and all that kind of stuff.
All right. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I'd still like to ask for that.
Yeah.
Scott, I apologize, I've got to leave. I have great interest in what you're talking about. I've got to go, so I bet we can make that work session, I think will be really helpful.
So,
But I apologize, I do have to go.
thank you. I mean, I don't know how to word a motion for approval with conditions in this particular case. I personally would like to see some of these things really looked at before we wholesale recommend approval. So if anybody has any thoughts for me, that'd be awesome. Or wants to make a motion so I don't have to make another one tonight, that'd be awesome.
I recommend making a motion to table it over. till at least the next meeting.
But I think they're wanting to,
Want to get it done.
Well, we can make that motion, and then council doesn't have to follow it.
Yeah.
But, so is that the motion you're making? We have a motion on the floor made by Adolphus Gaither to table the adoption of the proposed Unified Development Code.
Next meeting?
June,
that's going to be after June 20th.
this will be after June, the deadline.
Should we try to can we do a called meeting before that? If we did a called meeting before that? After the
Well-
work session before?
So, Mr. Gaither, are you agreeable to amending your motion before we go into discussion? Are you agreeable?
I will be here.
Yes, till at least after
Well-
your meeting on the 1st.
Okay.
So,
So we have a motion on the table to recommended table the adoption of the UDC.
Next Thursday.
Do you want to have a called meeting on the 15th? Y'all can have a called meeting on the 8th. That gives a week. I've got a conflict. I can't.
on the
I have a conflict on the 8th as well.
I will be late.
Okay.
The 15th? Or the 6th?
I'm available on the 6th.
As am I.
Are you available on the 6th?
I'm available on the 6th.
And being a call meeting, all you do is notify the paper
Yep.
24 hours in advance and publish on the board. So,
Is there any of us here that cannot do the 6th?
I'll be out of town.
you'll be out of town on the 6th. Lucky you.
I'm ready. Walk to Mayfield School.
Okay.
Half a day at that.
Ms. Brown, when do you return?
When do I retire?
Yes, return.
Return, not retire.
Oh, I'm already gonna say I already retired. It will be, I'll be gone the full week, wait a minute, I'm looking at May, excuse me. I will be gone the full week of the 4th through 10th. So I won't be back until the 11th. Then I'll go again on my birthday, 19,
Okay.
and 24.
So, how does everybody look for either 12th, Monday the 12th, or Tuesday the 13th?
The 13th is HPC.
Oh, okay.
12?
12.
I can do the 12th.
How do you feel about a Monday meeting?
Because Mondays aren't long enough as it is.
Yeah, really.
I have a conflict on
Okay.
that.
All right.
Okay.
Well, and you go back out of town
19.
19th?
The 19th.
Okay. What time is HPC?
It is at 6, so if we want to do it afterwards, we can. If we want to
Do
do,
you guys have a lengthy agenda?
we have a COA, we have like 4 or 5 items on the agenda.
Let's don't make that day any longer.
Listen.
14th.
I'm fine with that.
Throwing dice here. 14th.
Me too.
So, Mr. Gaither,
Flight day.
are you
Wednesday.
able to, will you consider amending your recommendation?
Yes,
To table to a call meeting on the 14th?
on the 14th, yes.
Okay. Do you want to do it at 5:30 or 6?
At 6.
Okay, 6 it is. So,
My office doesn't close till 5. I can't make it.
we have a motion to table the adoption of the proposed UDC until a call meeting on June 14th. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Will that be the monthly meeting, or will we have another one on the 27th? Like, is this going to be?
I have not received any cases, so we can,
That will be,
regular
Yep.
call meeting.
yep.
Okay.
You just don't want to see us twice in a month.
Well, I'm not going to be here on the 27th, so I'm going to try to cram it all into one day.
I'm not either. Okay. On the 14th?
June is a problem for me. I wouldn't be here in June anyway.
You're just going on a
I'm
month-long
having a
vacation.
baby. Sorry,
How many grandbabies is this?
it's gonna be bad.
Wow, okay.
Well, I guess
Well-
that's an excused absence.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
On vacation.
would you like to send your concerns to Ashley so that we can meet on the 14th? Okay, if you don't mind.
And anybody that has questions prior to the 14th, please let me know.
Yep, we're going to get it done.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, signify by raise your hand. Thank you. All right, so one last public hearing.
It's a public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
So, consideration of adoption of the zoning map. And Ashley, I'm guessing this is,
It's in tandem, kind of.
yeah, it's adoption of the zoning districts. So it doesn't affect the body of the UDC, only the zoning districts. Is that correct?
Correct. So, I'll just go over this really fast. The changes is just taking all the commercial districts, making them business, changing the Ag 2 designation to agriculture because we don't have that anymore, adding the downtown corridor overlay, adding the watershed protection overlay, and then removing the previous corridor overlays from the zoning map. And staff's going to recommend approval, but it goes kind of hand in hand with the UDC. So until we adopt that, we can't really adopt
the
this.
verbiage.
Yeah, it is basically just putting it in a pretty little map, the words.
Making the colors match the...
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no one signed up for or against. I don't think I do anyway. Nope, I don't.
We've lost most of our audience.
Yeah, thank you guys for hanging in there with us. So we don't have anyone signed up to speak for or against. We'll close the public hearing. It seems pretty cut and dry. Can't adopt the zoning map until the UDO is adopted. Zoning map has to follow the UDO because it's a consolidation of zoning districts. Any questions, concerns, comments?
No.
A motion.
Motion that we pause the motion. So we need to adopt the zoning map at the same time we do the UDC recommendation. Okay, so I'm going to table this until the 14th, when it will be addressed at the same time as the UDC approval recommendation.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we got 2 seconds. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Okay, close the public hearings. Unfinished business.
Do we have any?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Other than the UDC?
New business.
I don't have any new business for you guys.
Nothing coming up.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I'm tired of talking. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.